Hello, I'm Kathleen Hall of CIO Marketing Services, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webcast, Building a Retail AI Strategy. Gen AI provides an unprecedented opportunity for reimagining value chains, brand loyalty, business models, and much more in the retail industry. But as executives begin to see the real, quantifiable business value from their AI investments, what lessons and insights can retailers leverage to ensure a successful AI journey? Well, joining us today to discuss their own AI journey, along with industry-wide opportunities and obstacles around adoption and implementation, we have three guests. Sharms Bala, Chief Information Officer at JCPenny, Richard Spencer, Chief Information Officer at Belk, and Krishna Mohan, Vice President and Deputy Head of AI.Cloud Unit at Tata Consultancy Services. Welcome all. Would you like to say a few words to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Sharms Bala, like Kathleen mentioned, CIO, JCPenny. I have spent 25 plus years in retail tech. That's been my forte. Worked for almost 20 years with Walmart, then moved to Gap Inc. for about 4 years, and then now currently enjoying my time here at JCPenny for the last 2 years now. Focused on turning around an iconic brand and like I said, enjoying. And this is a great topic for conversation today because there is a lot that we can do and excited about the opportunities that come in front of us through AI.
Great. My name is Richard Spencer. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Belk. So certainly I feel a kinship with Sharms. My background is more along the lines of product development. I became the Chief Information here at Belk a couple of years ago. Really exciting time with everything that's happening in the industry around AI. So excited to talk about that.
Thanks, Sharms. Richard, Krishna Mohan with the Tata Consultancy Services, 3 decades of experience in the IT, ran multiple service lines. Right now with AI.Cloud unit of TCS, bringing the power of AI, including generative AI and the cloud to customers like JCPenny, Belk, and others. So glad to be here.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. So I'd like to start with AI dominating the headlines over the last 18 months. What are your thoughts around the impact of Gen AI specifically on retail organizations?
So let me start this, Kathleen. I don't know where to start actually, right? Like there's just so much conversation and so much going on. But how I look at it and how it has actually shaped for retail orgs would be, it's looked at as a heavy augmentation in decision making. That's like the lens that I feel AI is playing and can play a role, right? It's more about how do I improve efficiency? How do I focus on cost reductions? How do I optimize things that are in play? Whether it is in decision making, whether it is in just daily day-to-day operations, but that's the focus that has been through any time I talk to any of my retail partners. This is what we are focused on. We are talking about. There are some easy wins, right? Like easy things, right? Like content creation, management, making it like much more attributes based, much more like user friendly, customer friendly. There's a lot that can be done. And then the other piece of it is also customer service, right? Like we as customers, when we go whether to a store, physical store, or to online, we are so focused on how do we get the best experience possible, right? Because that's what makes a difference for us to either buy the things that we want or to come back and buy the things. So how do I build that experience as one of the basic foundation? And AI can definitely play, and it is playing, and it can play a big role in that. I read it somewhere, something about it could eventually, like AI could eventually boost about like the productivity about 2% of annual revenues just by the mere factor of like focusing on it, right? And it's not like we are not talking about like rocket science. We are talking about the basic foundational things that we can set it up, can help us get there. So I'm excited that there are so many opportunities that we can actually play with.
Yeah, if I could elucidate a little bit further on what Sharms has said. I mean, I think that for us, it's about, so many different aspects of our day-to-day job. It's a little bit about, just to continue on that about ideation, right? Like the idea of coming up with new ways of thinking things. It runs the gamut from contracting to content generation. There's the other part about AI, which I think is very exciting too, is you sort of flip the idea of making it sort of AI to IA, intelligent automation, right? So you can just write in a prompt, like, automate this task for me. Like the simple ones are like, hey, you can use Microsoft Copilot, for instance, and say, find me a meeting with the following 4 people. You don't have to pull up their schedules. You don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. And, Microsoft's always had a flavor of that, but now it can go beyond that and say, well, 4 of these people are available this, but one person has a meeting at the time. Do you want to schedule it there anyway? It can give you lots of good, positive examples. And that's just a very small unit of efficiency, right? So it's just across the gamut of how it affects how you do your business. So it's pretty fun.
And as a service provider, Catherine, last 1 year has been an awesome ride. Learning the technology, generative AI itself, and then exploring the possibility of what all it can actually do, both on the IT as well as business side. I think Sharms spoke about, revenue increasing opportunity for customers, for enterprises, because of AI, and particularly generative AI, the new kid of the block, if you will. It's a really excellent opportunity for us to interact with so many customers across the globe. I think recently TCS Thought Leadership Institute has published a study, AI for Business, where we interviewed around 1,300 CEOs, plus additional P&L owners of businesses. They believe, 80% of them believe, that the actual value, long-term value of generative AI and AI combination is actually in increasing revenues for those businesses, finding new business models, validating their business models currently that they have for in the long run. And it's an absolute excitement that we see. But at the same time, there are also 80+% of the people who actually believe that there is a regulatory framework, a consistent framework that is required, global framework. The need is actually felt by these execs. How do you measure Gen AI is evolving as well. So pretty exciting times. The last 1 year, we spent time on exploring the possibilities. Now it's settling down, and now people are focusing on how do I implement this for the long-term value.
Thank you. I'm getting that excitement from all 3 of you. I'd love to hear some examples of the types of AI implementations that you're currently doing.
JCPenny, if I look at, Kathleen, I think I will break it into 2 separate ones. One is focused on like obvious business use cases, right? Like we spoke about revenue generating, spoke about like customer experience, some of the things that we are doing on content. So there are use cases that we are actually proof of concepting, right? Like it's not like, hey, we've implemented them, but we are trying to do that. And then the second piece is more focused on what I call it as engineering productivity, right? Like how do I create productivity efficiencies in our ways of working, right? So how can I make it easy for our engineers to be able to do certain things, like whether it is use case or test case creations? Can we just ask, and we've had examples of like, we are like, okay, this is the scenario, tell me all the possible test cases. And sometimes, obviously, we don't think of some of those things, but then when you look at them, you are like, okay, this is something that we never spoke about or we never thought about. And then at the same time, there are also cases where you can automate the test cases, right? And these are efficiency gains, but these are also like learning opportunities for my engineers and my testers to understand the ecosystem, because not all the time, everybody has the privilege of understanding the ecosystem before they start coding or developing any of the newer things. So this can be a much more easier way for them to absorb it. And then the other thing that I'm excited about that we have done just in the last couple of weeks is every day we have like a list of like issues that our specific teams are looking at. Like if you take the SRE team, the site team, which looks at what happened yesterday, what were all the issues, what were the customer related issues, what were the technology issues. And so there's a report that gets generated. And then one of my leaders asked AI to come back and tell, like, can you categorize these issues so that I don't have to go through a list of like 35, or some days it's 12, some days it's 65, categorize them. And we have been able to look at them and say, every day we have password resets. 15% of your connections with SRE team is on passwords. 25% of it is based on things that are more easily automated and solvable, right? So we are able to categorize them without having to spend hours of time for us to be able to categorize and then actually come back with the resolution. So it's like, I get excited about like productivity in terms of engineering, where they can focus on building capabilities. At the same time, there are so many use cases that can, like whether it's demand forecasting, whether it is modeling for how the staffing needs to be. There are so many things that we can actually utilize as a starting point. Even if it is not the decision-making tool yet, we can make it as a starting point so that you get a good push from the beginning instead of like waiting for it to happen.
If I may, like some of the use cases that, we're working on or have actually put in production, oftentimes leverage our partners to help us with. And I think that's an important aspect, because a lot of your partners are investing heavily. They invest time and thought processes in these areas. And so really leveraging what they've already done and figure out how to apply that to your own systems is key to rapid success. A great example, I think, also is that sometimes people are a little bit nervous about AI. Will it replace my job? And I think that the key here really is about, in so many areas we have a labor need, and it's not that we can't find people to hire. Sometimes it's like we don't have the resources to do everything we'd like to do. And so you can really use AI to really sort of like, multiply the efforts of your team. A great example is when we think about marketing, oftentimes and I won't give you exact numbers, but like, for instance, we have, say, 5 cohorts that we market to, right? So we have like young professional and grandma and whatever it is, right? Like those are the cohorts that we market to. And the reason we chose those is they're big enough to make money from, right? They're big enough cohorts, right? You don't want to spend $100,000 marketing to one person, right? So your cohorts have to be, so there's always been this idea of how do we personalize, right? And AI really brings down that cost of personalization because it does so much of the work for you, where one person may have taken 5 days to come up with a marketing plan for 5 cohorts. Now that same person can do a marketing plan for 50 cohorts because AI, he can really leverage AI to really help him or her, depending on who's doing the work. And so just, that's exciting, like, because now you can really talk to your customers, like Sharms was saying, you talk to your customers more on a one-to-one basis. It's not really necessarily one-to-one, but it's maybe, it's a much more personal message. Instead of just blasting people with 50 emails, you send them the email that they want to hear. And it makes everybody's life, it makes your customer's life better because now they don't have to sort through all the shit. And so that's great. The other aspect of AI, which is not regenerative, is really about like planning and stuff like that. We think about assortment planning, inventory planning, buying planning. All these things are great use cases for, models. And so that's the tried and true direction we've always gone. And so there's still so much excitement around all that stuff. So that's the areas that we concentrate on, the areas that we can really leverage our partners. It's fantastic.
From an overall experience, serving multiple retail customers broadly, if you look at it as a retail segment, AI is not new to retail. There are traditional AI techniques like machine learning and deep learning already become very mature in the areas like demand forecasting, inventory optimization, next best action, or personalized product recommendations, right? For example, TCS has a product platform called Optimera, which is an AI-powered strategic intelligence platform that helps retailers make integrated machine learning-driven merchandising decisions. But with generative AI coming in, we broadly see the deployments in 3 kind of ways. What we call is assist, augment, and transform. Assist is more like wherever there is a knowledge work, how generative AI kind of assist and make the human look smart. and multiple examples are like that. Is simple chatbots where it kind of ingests a lot of the enterprise data, typically unstructured data like documents, and provide a simple natural language interfaces to query that knowledge, right? And specifically in retail, it's anything that intuitive customer facing product search experience is an excellent example that we could actually provide. In fact, we have successfully deployed a product search bot for a UK retailer, that understands the needs before recommending a product, right? And a lot of back office use cases are also there, which actually improves employee experience as well, right? The second thing what I said about augmenting, which is basically says the role of generative AI basically looks at doing a subset of work that typically a knowledge worker will do. But these things focus more on the business process. For example, in one of the global retailer, we deployed a gifting assistant. That means a user can come, interact with this gifting assistant, explain all the context of whether it's a birthday, who the gift is supposed to, is being given, who is getting the gift, what their tastes are, and the occasion. So you kind of have a conversation with this gifting assistant, and therefore it kind of reads into the product literature, not only just the product catalog, and provides the recommendations, what the gift is, and kind of helps the customer completely, buy and have that experience, help the customer complete the end-to-end experience. So, these are the couple of examples. I think Richard touched upon the marketing for a retailer in Canada. Basically, generative AI is being leveraged to create a complete e-commerce marketing, product catalog, if you will, depending on the various needs of, the customer base and the marketing programs that they have. So, in fact, very interestingly, the study that I said, almost 65% of the senior retail executives wants to use AI for more personalized interactions in these marketing initiatives. So, there are a lot of examples like in the assistant augment category, but I definitely see the actual long-term value of generative AI is in the transform area, where you have the ability to, relook at the value chains and value exchange, and probably supply chain, and look at it, how do you reimagine that? So those are far and few, and they are coming up. But these are the early examples that we see of where a lot of customers are, deployed. These are majority of those things I took is more of business use cases or the implementation. But there are even in the IT side, like Shyam said. In fact, one of the large global company applied generative AI, and we helped them apply generative AI to minimize, the time it takes to, troubleshoot a priority one incident, right? And where it automatically, when you have hundreds of people logging into the bridge, figuring it out what the right cause is, and who is the right group to kind of troubleshoot. So we applied generative AI to kind of automatically, the moment it hits, what is the most probable cause based on the previous experiences, and it's gone on live in production. So you have these IT cases where you're really looking at productivity, automation, reducing the MTTR, of course the development experiences for test case developments and overall product development. And then you have the business use cases, which focuses on marketing, gifting assistant, and product search and overall improve the customer experience. So pretty good set of examples, I would say.
Yeah, some fantastic examples there. Thank you. But I'd like to ask, are there any specific challenges around the adoption of an implementation of AI for retail?
Anything that comes with like awesome features always has challenges, right? And especially when something is new, there is so much that we have to understand before we can start like just replacing. I would break it into two separate things. One is lack of foundation, right? Like whether it's foundational data, foundational ecosystem, because garbage in, garbage out, right? Like we don't want to get into a model of like doing everything without actually fixing the foundation. So the focus needs to be, let's fix the foundational data. Let's fix the foundational ecosystem. Let's fix like what is needed. And then you feed it into, or you use, whether you use it for assist or augment or transform, let's make sure that foundation is fixed. I think that's the number one that I would say it's a big challenge, because there are so many, especially retailers, haven't invested in this for quite a long time. And now there is not enough time, right? So they are like, okay, let me just do some and then some investment and let me try on top of it. I think that comes up with a huge challenge. The second piece of it, which is something that we all talk about all the time, is just the exposure of IP, exposure of data security, right? Like how do we ensure that in the long run, especially when you're talking about transforming, like when you remove the human element out of it and you're not augmenting, but you're just letting it do the things, how do we ensure that in the long run, it doesn't become detrimental to what we are trying to accomplish? And I think there are ways to do it, to not to have that happen, but that thorough process, thorough check, and thorough details that needs to be ironed out have to be done, and ensuring that data security is top of mind is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually go further. In our own efforts, we make sure that there's always human involved in the processes that we use, and we train to that. Now, we've also added things like policies and stuff like that that you could add to these models to help prevent, bad outcomes, hallucinations, or just where the model doesn't necessarily understand how something might be offensive, right? So in other words, if you're doing a sale and it generates an email that says, something sexist, right? Like, hey, cleaning products are on sale for Mother's Day, get your mom to get in there in the kitchen or something, like who knows where that part of the model came from, but it might be there. And so if someone's not involved and actively looking at these things, it's hard to protect everything in a policy. So we made it a internal process to always have humans in that sort of loop. So it's really, for us, it really is about helping people get better. Even in use cases where you have to just remember you can't over rely on these models at this point, right? Because they also have biases built into them and how the models work, right? So the biases can just, and a lot of times these biases are benign. They're not meant in any negative way or like that, but they still exist and they're not going to help your business. So that's an important part for us. I think, data security and how you approach them, these are things that IT really has to help, your cybersecurity team has to help with. Again, a lot of these models have the ability to say, do not include my data within your learning set. And so you want to make sure that you think about that as well. Training, I think, a great point to your question, Kathleen, is one of the things that a lot of companies are doing, and we've done is as we roll this out through departments and stuff like that, we really talk about training and what AI means and what generative AI means and how we can use it and how we can't use it. And so just having that training so it gets people more comfortable with it. And again, I'll reiterate what I talked about before. People are a little nervous sometimes about their jobs. So you think about like content creators for your marketing team, they're like, well, AI can put together Christmas photos for me and stuff like that. And do I really need to pay someone like an expert in this? And the thing is again, for us, our policy has been like, hey, we've been limited in the amount of content we create. That creates our personalization sort of bottleneck, right? This helps us break that bottleneck. You still need someone who understands what you're trying to achieve and can get there. But now you can have them be more productive. So they're not doing the simple things like remove a person from the background of this image, stuff like that, all can be done automatically. And so just helping people feel comfortable, helping them leverage it, and then also listening to them, and to get and where you need to be. So I think all these things kind of play together, and to understand like it's a tool, but a hammer can be dangerous, right? So you got to make sure you use it correctly. And that's where we're setting at.
Very well said, Richard and Shyam. I think it has a tremendous potential. It's very important for people to understand, because of its potential, how quickly potentially things can go south. So that's education is super important. Therefore, continue to train on different LLM. And let's also understand generative AI is still in the ascending aspect of the hype cycle. It's not settled yet. It has a tremendous potential, and everybody is excited about it. And I, at the same time, I'm pretty encouraged by the guardrails that overall as an industry is coming together to take out these biases, to improve the accuracy. You need to continue to train them. Right? There are, you have what I call as the world wisdom in these LLMs. But if you really want, get best value out of it, you have to feed it the enterprise context and the enterprise data. Then only global enterprises can really make it. So it's a mixture of world wisdom and an enterprise wisdom coming together, and then curating it in such a way that it can actually help. So good news, a lot of guardrails standards are getting published. Europe has already taken lead in it. US has actually rolled out. And I think one of the customer told me it's something. He says, hey, LLM will come with its own biases while the companies are actually trying to take it out as much as while training. But at an enterprise, it is the job of the enterprise IT team or service providers like us to kind of implement those enterprise policies on it, so that it doesn't necessarily, to Richard's point, give some unintended offensive messages out. Right. So I think that's one thing that we see in the adoption, but it's not slowing down the experimentation. So it's everybody's cautious about it, but they're going ahead. But I think the other challenge that I also see is there is a problem of plenty. A lot of enterprises have actually implemented so many use cases. Now they're questioning about where is the value. Guys, I have hundreds of use cases. Now, how do I take it to production? So that's the path that we see right now, because enterprise scaling it, an idea into integrating into all the systems and rolling out with guardrails and making it work, delivering a business case on it, an ROI on it, is a challenge. And I think that's where right now we see that experimentation is more or less settling down, and now rollout of production is actually happening, and it's slowly progressing.
Thank you. So obviously one issue around all of this is data protection. Could you tell me how you've built in policies around data governance?
I can go first on this one, Sharms, just give you a break. So what we did is one of the things we did is immediately when this sort of stuff started breaking and people started flying around is we put out a policy, just like a standard policy to the company that said, hey, we know this is exciting. We know this is interesting. We'd like you to work with us on what your use cases and how you'd like to use it, and not just go out to a web browser and start typing in company data. And we just explained to them, like what the problem with that is. And so that's the first thing. But then what we did is we said, hey, let us develop portals for you to use. And these portals you can then implement policies through the portals, right? You can implement essentially, I'd say almost like a model for the prompt, like a prompt model. So that allows us to filter out what people are able to generate. And it's not perfect, but it helps people to understand. And then we also have a regular review of what that looks like. We use for actual production use cases, we use our own models, right? Our own implementations. So depending on what vendor you use, and I won't mention vendors because I don't think that's necessarily appropriate for this, but certain vendors will have the ability for you to use, like, essentially they won't capture your data. They're not training on your data. So you're just literally using their model. It's just like you put data in, the data comes out, and that's it. The data doesn't exist anywhere else. And so that's a great way to do a lot of these things. Other models you need to train on your data to really be useful, like see customer service bots, things like that. They really have to answer questions about your company. You can do those within your own instances. And so just kind of taking those different approaches of policy, both actual like computer policies and how you write the application so that people are accessing these through sort of the portals that you build is a great way to do it. And then training helps to minimize the sort of the exposure, right? And so you do these different things. We in those training sessions, we oftentimes get really good ideas too of things we may want to follow up on. And then you have to do kind of like Krishna had mentioned, is like, okay, if that saves me 20 minutes a day, but it costs me $100,000, that's probably never going to really work. So maybe that's not like, it's a cool idea, but it's not something we want to pursue at this time. We want to pursue those things that are very like, oh, that's going to make me $10 million. It's going to make me $100 million. It's going to be, whatever. Or it's, to Sharms and I know Sharms feels me here. Like I can save $400,000 on expense, right? Like that's where we're always driven in IT, of course. So I think, so that's been our policy. I mean, there's obviously data tools you can use, stuff like that. We haven't invested heavily in that direction yet. That's probably something that we'll do over time. We're really just managing those policies is a big help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Richard, you put it all together in very similar fashion that we are also doing at JCPenny, is that governance and policy is very important. Making sure that we have a governing body includes like definitely security, IT, and at the same time our legal counsel, so that they can get involved in places where what kind of data can leave the ecosystem, what kind of data can come into the ecosystem, and who's using for what purposes. So there's a governing body which helps. It's more to give us visibility on what people are trying. And absolutely right, Richard, when you said, when we do these trainings or when we do these conversations with like the different teams, they're coming up with like really brilliant ideas. But at the same time, I don't think we want to do everything because at the end of the day, you are right that we will end up spending a whole lot of money, but we are not getting anything and everything that we have been wanting to. So ensuring that we are actually focusing on the high visible, high return generating areas so that we can actually get the benefit. And then once that's done, then we can start self-funding, right? Like we want to be able to self-fund some of these other things, but that's the approach that we are trying to take. But it has to be governed. Otherwise, now everybody has like their phone where they can just key in anything and then you get ChatGPT returning back everything that you need. So we are trying to help keep it as open as possible, but at the same time restricting them with guardrails has been the most I would say best way to put it on how we are trying to manage it.
Majority of it is covered by Richard and Sharms, and absolutely, right. There are a lot of measures that are, as a TCS, we came up with the guardrail framework called Safety SAFTI, which actually looks at, of course, all aspects of from security, accountability, and a lot of, in an integrated way, secured by design. Because majority of the customers are also asking, hey, how is my data treated? What kind of access that you have when you train, LLM gets trained on my data? And how, if you probably recall it, what we used to call it explainable AI. So we would, before Gen AI, we wanted to actually know how AI is actually acting. And now that's actually probably become more pronounced with generative AI. Lawyers getting in, wants to know, security folks getting in, wants to know how the data is treated. But I should also say, majority of the the LLM providers and the combination of the cloud providers. They have implemented such a segregation that it's your data. It's you can actually kind of completely fence it. It's not necessarily fed into the broader LLM training, if you will. So those kind of, as more and more multi-model, adoption has increased in enterprises, because no one LLM can really solve all your, possibilities. So therefore, it is multiple models have to actually be applied, whether it's a data, the text or video or other aspects of it. So therefore, we see the ecosystem is actually building those multi-model things. So let's take AWS Bedrock for that matter, or Google Model Garden. They talk about it. Even Microsoft has actually gone beyond OpenAI and looking at supporting Llama and others. So as these models are becoming, and they also are implementing inherently by design segregations, and where you can actually have a view of how your data is handled. So that is the thing, and that's why I think slowly the confidence is actually increasing, and we see this thing getting settled in the coming quarters. Remember, it's still in the hype cycle and ascending aspect of the hype cycle, but it'll get there.
Thank you. That actually leads on quite nicely to my next question, because I wanted to ask, what role do you see ecosystem partners playing when it comes to helping retail organizations meet some of the challenges that you've been discussing?
I'll take this one again, just to keep it lively. So I mentioned it earlier. I mean, it's, you should leverage your partners, right? They're investing heavily. They have insights into what other people have done and what's been successful and where the stumbling blocks have been. And so they can often provide you some good advice, good thought processes that you really want to take into account. Also, they have some fantastic, developed applications that you can really use. We use some, from TCS already to help us with a lot of automation around problem management, work management, and that's been very successful for us. And then, we think about some of our other partners in the industry, around search, recommendations, those kind of things, personalization, content recommendations. There's a lot of investment being happening. And so really, you should go and talk to your partners, but also talk to your partners' competitors and see, who's got the best solution out there. You don't always have to develop it yourself, for certain. And so that's, it's great. Then you think about the code part, the operational part, you have partners like Hugging Face out there that can provide a tremendous input. And so there's so many good resources to use. And so I really would encourage you to leverage your partners, talk to them, and see what they're up to. And so that's what we've leaned into quite heavily.
Absolutely aligned. I think our ecosystem partners play a really important role in this, especially because if you want to bring in consistency, if you want to bring in adoption, if you want to try out things that have worked elsewhere, where else can you go, right? Like what Richard was talking about, our partners have actually tested it in different industries. They've tested it in different environments. And if it has worked, and if they have actually made it much better, then it becomes easy for us to adopt, and obviously not customized to what we want it to be, but also change our own ways of working, our own processes in place. So making sure that we take the help of them. And you're right, absolutely, Richard. It's ensure that you're not just going to one place, but shop around, understand what's out there. What are all some of the things that have been tested and actually producing results, and then help create more, right? Because you also play a big role in creating some of the capabilities that doesn't exist yet, because it could be a one-off that is a requirement for you. And how do you build that in those products? And I think that can help with adoption too.
Yeah. And as a service provider, we work with the ecosystem is really key, the partner ecosystem. You have a traditional foundation models and LLM players, Gen AI players, right? Anthropic, Hugging Face, Llama from an open source perspective. And then you have the hyperscalers, Microsoft, OpenAI, AWS, and Google. So it's actually quite evolving place. So we are working very closely with them to kind of help improve the product. Right. So the two ways of looking at it. One, the product themselves are actually evolving. So how do we help them basically fine tune their products, if you will, to deliver maximum results and very quickly from the product feature richness perspective. Because it's very important. Generative AI caught the attention because consumers have adopted it pretty quickly. So everybody then got under pressure that you need to make it work for enterprise. And that enterprise knowledge and how these things have to work in an enterprise is where we're actually working with our partners. So, and the other aspect of it is the talent. For example, TCS, we already trained 350,000 people of us on generative AI, and the basic awareness of the thing out of over 600,000. And, percentage of that focuses on the depth, right? It used to be, AI specialists, very, very few. Now, generative AI is definitely, completely reimagined this space from a skills level because it's applicable everywhere. Whether every type of work that we do, there is a thing. And if you look at the ERPs, right, also everybody is including generative AI capability in their product. You take SAP, ServiceNow or Salesforce or any industry products, retail industry products on supply chain, it's getting embedded. So it's everywhere. So I think the ecosystem to work together to serve the needs of Sharms and Richards is extremely important. And that's where we are focusing on. It's some key area.
Fantastic, thank you. So my final question to you all, what would be your key piece of advice for executives embarking on their own AI journey?
I look at it as, maybe I'll break it down to three things. Number one, be intentional. Don't just try it just because it's out there. Be very intentional about where you're going to focus on. The next one would be start small. Don't take up a whole lot of, okay, I'm going to check this out and it's going to produce me millions and millions of dollars, but always start small. And then the last one that I would focus on is just start smart, right? Focus on the areas which is actually going to give you the benefits instead of saying anything and everything which is easy to use or you're able to convince a business partner to be able to do it. So these three things would be the best I would suggest as the ways for anybody starting to look into it would help.
I would definitely reiterate that. I think, in addition, as we've said, there's a lot of good advice out there from your partners, right? So, work with your trusted partners and understand, what they're doing. I think to Krishna's point earlier, any new software that you're looking at, you should definitely be interested in what their AI roadmap looks like, and how they're thinking about using it. It's going to be very different for different customers, right? In some cases, it may be about how they integrate, and are they going to have the ability to use AI with integrations and stuff like that, those kind of directions. But they should definitely be having a plan. They should definitely be investing. If they're not, then you really want to question if this is the right direction to go. So yeah, again, just lean into your partners for that tactical change. I think strategic. It is, as many things, it's a long race. It's a marathon. So don't try to sprint out the gate and try to do everything to everybody and invest $40 million. Or we're going to invest a quarter of our budget into AI. That doesn't make sense for you. You need it to be purposeful. And I think that's what Sharms is essentially saying. You need to be purposeful here.
A couple of things. Focus on the value case, not the use case. Look at the long term. Look at the ROI. Look at where it makes real sense. I think Sharms touched on it quite well. Second, implementation. Don't look for quick results. the results actually, it's in any AI deployment. We all know, not only generative AI, is an iterative process. So you actually had to keep on applying it to get the benefits and the accuracy and the results. So it's the long term play. Don't look at implementing it and then say immediately I don't have the results. So make the right choice where to implement, like she said, smart choice. But wait for the results in the long run. It only improves over the time. Third, it's evolving space. I think everybody is trying to bring down the cost. The chipsets are being more packaged to reduce the cost. The token sizes are actually being increased so that it can consume more and reduce the cost. In the short term, FinOps is really important. Before you put a business case, look what it costs or it's going to cost, like Richard said, and then have a long-term view. So those are the things that we suggest.
Thank you. Some great advice there. Unfortunately, that does bring us to the end of today's webcast. I'd like to thank my guests, Sharms, Richard and Krishna, for such an interesting conversation. And thank you to our audience for joining us. For more information on this topic, please visit the resources section on your screen. I'm Kathleen Hall. Goodbye.